Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're very excited that you are able to join us and be a part of our virtual panel on the different science options that may be available to you, not only as a major, but also as a career. Just so that you are aware, this is being recorded so we can share it with others. If you have a question, you are more than welcome to use the chat option at the bottom of your screen, and it will be directed to myself and Charmin. Charmin Bryant is my co-host today. She's with the Office of Student Success. And I'm Karen Ricker. I'm from the Experiential Learning and Career Development Center. And we have three wonderful faculty members who are able to join us today. We have Dr. Karen Campbell, who is talking about the biology program. Dr. Hearon, who will be talking about health psychology. And then we also have Dr. Aquino, who will be talking about public health. We have 4 questions for each of you, so we'll go through one program at a time. And students, if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat and we can ask them as appropriate. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Dr. Campbell, how about we start with you?
It's fine.
Awesome, okay. So when talking about the biology major, a lot of students come into it, really gung-ho and very excited, and there's a lot of different options with bio. So what would you say are the academic and personal qualities that are necessary to be successful within that major?
Well, I think the personal qualities and the academic qualities that are essential are true across the board. It's going to be a question of being able to keep up with material. A lot of introductory courses in biology and other places are kind of like learning a foreign language at the same time that you're learning to create sentences and explain concepts in that foreign language. So it's a lot all at one time. And what students need to realize really early on is that the work that they do between classes and the work that they do to review their notes and make sure that it makes sense and to kind of compare things is really a lot of the kind of putting those language skills together. Because a lot of the science courses are, just they introduce a lot of vocabulary, but then they're expecting that opportunity to explain concepts and solve problems using that vocabulary. And so there's a lot of personal responsibility that comes out in all courses, especially introductory courses like that, where students are maybe hearing some things that they've heard before in high school classes, but now they're expected to say those things, and they haven't really had practice in doing that. So I think kind of just getting into that mindset where the work for a course is practice. It's like learning to swim or learning to play a musical instrument. You can hear it and think that sounds really great. It's like, and then somebody hands you the violin and you're like, well, no, I don't actually know how to do that. I just watched you do it. So it's like, how do you practice that? But it's not really biology specific. I think it's really just introductory course specific in some ways, and then those skills carry forward into upper level courses, so that even when you're talking to juniors and seniors and you say, remember in our introductory course where we talked about this, and people say, oh, not really. It's like, and you go back and you hear it again, then you put it into a new concept, or you develop it even more, or you apply it in a new situation, and so it's an opportunity for practice. For being able to carry that on. So recognizing that there's part of you that has to go into that. Again, it's not biology specific, but it's something that's important in success in college courses.
Excellent, thank you. What are the academic requirements and benchmarks that are important for not only the first year, but even beyond?
Well, in terms of I guess it's hard to fit this in, but what students learn in introductory science courses are meant to be the fundamentals that they're going to carry forward. So it's not enough to study for the test and then forget the material, but recognize what some of the concepts are. So like I just said, sometimes will come up in upper level classes, and really the only students that remember that they saw that in the introductory class are the students who are now the teaching assistants in the introductory class and go, oh yeah, we just did that. It's like everybody else is like, we did that 3 years ago. It's learning how to think about the concepts and learning to go, oh yeah, there's this mechanism or a process or an anatomical feature, but this is how we're going to apply this in this new situation. So the benchmarks for success in the classes are more learning how to think about the material and recognizing the importance of that it's not just memorizing something, but that it's figuring it out. A lot of students will say things like, oh, I don't know how you remember this. And it's like, well, I don't really, but I remember the concept and I can go back and recreate all the parts that come into this. And so I think that's part of it. Moving forward, there are a lot of introductory courses, but then also some sort of intermediate level courses that are required for application to professional programs and that are employers look for in terms of areas where you might have learned certain skills or had the opportunity to do problem solving in certain ways. And those are really varied. It depends on what students are looking at. So, pre-health programs have a lot of the same sorts of requirements in terms of coursework, but a lot of them also have clinical requirements. They want to know that you know how to work with people and that you've sort of seen what it would be like to be active in that field, because although you might not be a clinician as an undergraduate student, you need to kind of see how those people interact with each other and how physician assistants and physical therapists and clinical providers work with people, and to see what the people are like, to see if you can see yourself in that situation. So again, there are lots of combinations of those I guess benchmarks in some ways, but grades are always important. And specific grades matter, but the progression of grades matter more. So if you get a C in introductory biology, you learn from that, and you'll learn, oh, these are the things that I didn't do, and I'm, even throughout the semester, my grades are getting better. But then by semester, you show that continued improvement. That says more about you in some ways than if you have all A's. Because you've learned how to adapt to the situation. And that's so, as we've learned in a kind of a crash course this semester, adapting to situations is really important in life. And those are things that are also going to carry forward in terms of your future.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Now, I specifically requested that you join us because you are known as the pre-med queen. So, I mean, a lot of students come into the bio program expecting, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a physician assistant or PT. Can you tell us more about the different options career-wise that may be available for students within biology as a whole, both entry level and then even beyond if they decide to pursue, continued education or something like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a lot of clinical opportunities. And so students look at, in fact, it's changed over the years. It used to be, I want to be a doctor, and now it's, I want to be a neonatal neurosurgeon. I'm like, ooh, okay, that's good to know. So that's very specific. So do you know what that really means? And so part of the exploration is getting some clinical experience, shadowing physicians, being in a hospital setting, working in a senior citizen's home, anywhere where there's healthcare, to be able to see the teams that are involved. And so some of that is that kind of exposure, and it changes people's attitudes sometimes. It changes their perception of where they see themselves, because they get to see other individuals working with patients, or they get to see other applications, or they get to feel whether or not it's comfortable for them. I've had students go in and do a shadowing experience at the hospital and come back and say, so what else can I do? Because that's definitely not what I want to do. And that's a good thing to know, because it lets you say, oh, I'm not really comfortable with this, but I'm really interested in healthcare. And so that leads again to some other applications that you're going to hear about within the next few minutes, I'm sure, as people look and they kind of broaden their horizon about, okay, maybe neonatal neurosurgeon wasn't it, but maybe there are other things that I can do that may be in terms of research, or they may be in terms of public health, or they may be in terms of things that are more based in psychology or based in chemistry or based in physics. But they're things that they didn't really understand that they were really interested in. So whether you end up sort of pursuing something that has to do more with health communications rather than with the practice of healthcare, those are things that you kind of explore during the 4 years of an undergraduate as you complete other courses, as you explore other areas of research or other applications. I've had a lot of students come in over the years and apologize to me. It's like, I'm really sorry, but I don't want to be a doctor. And I'm going, me neither. And I think it's important for students to realize is that we don't have an agenda, and there are lots of ways in which students have opportunities to explore where they fit or what their next step might be, and where they might see themselves in terms of health careers. And so some students will go through and they'll follow the steps to be able to be, good, solid applicants for medical school or for veterinary school or dental school. And they knew that and they saw it, and the experience that over the years reinforces that. And there are other students that will discover other things. They'll see what a physician assistant really does. Or I had a student one time go and do an internship in a respiratory therapy area and fell in love with it. And it was like, that was very cool for me because it was just, it was kind of just what was available for them at the time, but they learned that they really enjoyed that very specific application of healthcare. And other students have gone completely different areas. They've kind of moved away from the clinical work, and they've discovered a love for doing research, for solving problems and figuring out puzzles, and it's led them down some very specific paths that seem fairly far removed from healthcare sometimes, to let them develop their skills in those areas.
Excellent. And then my last question for you is, as a student is going through and maybe they struggle with biology 151 or 152, at what point would you recommend that they explore or consider having a plan B for a major or adding a co-major?
You should always have a plan B. And sometimes it's because you discover that it wasn't really biology that you liked in high school. It was your biology teacher. It's like, oh, that's an important thing to know. But sometimes it's because you discover other things. And so this is easier for students, I think, a lot of the times than it is for their families. And I'll tell you, I was at Albright for 20 years as a professor, as a health sciences advisor, and my mom said to me, don't you really want to be a doctor? And it's like, no, I don't. I really don't. Because she just couldn't let that go, because that's what she knew. And so it's that openness to being able to discover things, to discover that you also really like history and you really want to study that, and you may still be holding on to and completing the requirements to be a dentist and go on to dental school, but you have this other area that you get to explore as an undergraduate. Or you have a student who comes in who thinks maybe biochemistry, and then they discover that through the math classes that they really like math, and they discover quantitative chemistry. And I don't even really know exactly what that is, but a lot of our students have sort of figured out that there are modeling and applications that are far removed from what they thought they wanted to study. But that's, it's not even a plan B at that point. It's just following a different path. And then sometimes students come in and they just really struggle, and they discover that they're really good in certain areas of study because of the way that the material is presented, or the way that they get to practice it, or they have to take their language classes, and discover that they're really good at that. How do you tie those skills that you're kind of discovering into your path? And that, like I said, it's not necessarily I have to abort this and go to plan B. It's more, hey, this is something that I'm really good at and I really enjoy. How can I make this part of my next step, and how does this part of my path? I think that's part of the conversation that you have with your advisors, part of the conversations that you have with your classmates, with upper level students that are helping you as tutors and as teaching assistants. They all contribute to helping you explore those strengths that you have and those opportunities that you have kind of in moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sharma, did you have anything else you wanted to ask or add?
No, that was great. That was great. Thank you very much, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. How about we go with Dr. Aquino next?
Hey, hi.
Hello. Thank you again for joining us today. And I'll be asking you the same questions. So we'll jump right in. what academic and personal qualities are necessary for someone to be really successful in the public health co-major?
That's not a simple, straightforward answer, only because public health encompasses so many different areas. So you can have the more science-based areas that obviously require more classes in the sciences and statistics. So for example, epidemiology, working in a public health lab, so biochemistry background. Then you have the policy aspect, right? So that would be someone who's maybe more focused in the political science area. And then you have the communication aspect. So again, that would be with the focus more on oral and written communications. A lot of it is personality driven. So for example, I just had one of my advisees said he originally wanted to go into epidemiology. And I kind of thought, well, you have a very outgoing personality. You're a real people person. So he kind of came to that conclusion on his own that he'd rather do something in public health that involved more face-to-face contact, right? So he's switching more of a focus to communications. That's just one example. So I think, not to jump ahead to some of your other questions, but I mean, I think one of the good things about our curriculum, right, is that students come in, sometimes they have a major declared, sometimes they don't. We ask them to take a wide variety of courses, and that can lead them to figure out where are their strengths and where are their weaknesses. So I think that it's almost a self-guided process. So as Professor Campbell said, it's really something a student and his or her advisor should work on. Look at where the students, what kind of coursework the student is doing well in, what does he or she enjoy, and try to figure out, for me, what within the very comprehensive field of public health might be a more appropriate place for the student to focus.
Excellent, thank you. Now, a lot of students aren't necessarily familiar with public health.
I think I'm not frozen.
Okay, all right.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. What academic requirements and benchmarks are really important for someone who's in their first year in the public health program and even beyond?
So what we'd really like students to do is first start with Public Health 101, which is the introductory course, which I teach, and I'm probably going to now teach it every semester. So that really is just a broad overview of all the different areas of public health. It asks the students to become familiar with the vocabulary of public health, understanding of the areas that are of interest to them. There are core requirements. So intro to public health, epidemiology, because you have to have a basic knowledge of that. It's a core course. Statistics, and there's flexibility as to which statistics class you can take depending on what your other major is. Global health. And then what I think is probably the most important aspect of our program is an internship. So it's important for students, I tell my advisees, you have to sort of map out a little bit time for you to take your internship and get those that time allotted for that. Because public health is an applied field, we feel it's very important for the students to have some hands-on experience by the time they graduate. And we also hope that maybe the internship will lead to a job offer in some way.
Absolutely, and that leads very nicely into the next question. What career paths are associated with public health? Because I think a lot of students don't necessarily understand what all is encompassed in public health.
Okay, so if we look at what's going on today, right, we have a great example. So what aspects of public health do we see with the COVID-19 pandemic? again, we can start with the science area, right? So we're relying very heavily on the work of epidemiologists who predict the patterns of disease, and they look at the way the disease has played out in other countries to predict how it might play out in our country. We need to be thankful to the tens of thousands of public health scientists who are working in public health labs to process all the tests that are being conducted. Public health also includes physicians and public health nurses, so that's another area. For people who are less interested in the science aspect of it, communication is crucial, right? For better or for worse, we can again use the current situation to look at how public health information is communicated. So to two groups, to other members of the public health community, so that's sort of official to official, but perhaps more crucially, how it's communicated to the lay public. So that's another sort of track within public health. So I think because it's such an interdisciplinary field, what I hope happens is if a student early enough finds his or her particular area of interest, they can do extra research, so in the form of an independent study or an honors thesis where they can focus on a specific aspect of public health that's of interest to them, and perhaps use that if they want to go on to some kind of graduate program. They could use that body of research to show graduate admissions committees that they know how to do research within an aspect of public health.
Excellent. Then last but not least, is there any point where you feel a student would want to consider maybe not pursuing the public health program or going for a plan B, so to speak?
I think that the way the program is designed at Albright, it's a co-major, right? And B, it can also be a minor. So it's very flexible. I haven't had, at least to my knowledge, there haven't been any students who have been unable to complete it. The only thing that I would emphasize is what I said at the beginning, and again, that's something a student would discuss with his or her advisor, is planning time in your schedule to do the internship.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Charmin, do
You're
you have
welcome.
any questions or anything to add?
I do not. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Aquino. And we'll move along to Dr. Hearon, who is reporting to us live from Teal Hall, it looks.
Hi, how are you?
So again, the same questions for you on behalf of the health psychology. A lot of students are looking into different psychology fields. So what academic and personal qualities do you think a student would need to be successful in that area?
Sure, I'm going to answer that fully, but first I just want to maybe explain what health psychology is, because it's
Yes,
a
please.
newer subdiscipline. I didn't know what it was when I was an undergraduate, and now I'm a professor of it, directing a program in it. So I know many students might not recognize the nuance behind what it actually is.
Yes, please.
So what we're doing is trying to take what we know in the fundamentals of psychology, but we often think about trying to understand people's mental health, and that's a piece of health psychology, but also applying what we know to physical health outcomes as well. So that's kind of the core of health psychology, and to do that, we apply a biopsychosocial model. So it's not even just saying, and that's why it's an interdisciplinary major in health psychology, because we aren't solely pulling from psychology. We're also pulling from the bio and the social aspects as well. So that's why you see so much cross-listing in our courses, and that's kind of the core of what the major in the field is. So I think the student who would match with health psychology as a major and future career opportunity is someone who's genuinely curious about health, but curious about it from that multidisciplinary perspective. So if someone wants to make the switch or join health psychology, they're not going to be able to just avoid the bio aspect for the rest of their career in college if they didn't like that. I'm sorry to say that, but we have a number of courses that are required and are specifically looking at that aspect of health. So it would be the student who really embraces that, who does not want to only live in Teal Hall, wants to spend a lot of time there and get to know us well, but who also wants to get exposure to these other areas that I think are so important in giving a well-rounded understanding of the health discipline.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then telling us a little bit more about, you mentioned that you pull from bio and psychology and sociology. What would you say are, the key points and benchmarks within your program?
Yeah, so early on, I would say strong performance in your general psychology. So that's giving you that kind of fundamental background. And it's okay if you're getting your feet wet, similar to what Dr. Campbell said, if you take the intro class and you get a C and sort of improve your study skills and learn where to go from there. But you have to be enjoying it as you're taking these classes, and things have to be sparking in your mind and a deeper curiosity. So in the first year, I would say that ideally for a major, good performance in general psych. And then we also cross-list a lot with public health, and Public Health 101 is one of our requirements. So I'd say that would be a great course. And then also if you can fit it, just our straight health psychology course is another good one to take early on in the major to get a sense of, again, a lot of people don't fully understand what this field and the specialization is. So I think that's another one to help students know if they're on the right track, if it is the right fit for them. Moving forward, definitely by sophomore year, we ideally like to have students taking our stats and methods sequence. So this is another big quality and characteristic to go back to that. It is a social science. So a lot of individuals talk to me about being interested because you have practicing health psychologists, being a clinician, and they're very interested in helping people. And this happens with normal, regular psych majors as well in the full track. And so they come to our stats methods class and say, well, I just want to treat people. I don't have to learn this like research stuff and all this data stuff and this math. I'm just going to grin and bear it. And I tell them you are doubly accountable if you want to go treat people for understanding the science behind everything and the research, and if you don't want to be a producer of the research, a consumer of the research. So I think that is a very strong benchmark. It scares them, but I say even if you want a clinical graduate program, the grade that they will look at most heavily is your stats and methods score. How did you perform in that class? So making sure that they come with a willingness and openness to accept the help that's available in it, and really kind of take that in.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And again, because it is relatively new for a lot of our students, what would be some career options for them after graduation?
Yeah. So again, a lot of students come to this major with an interest in being a clinician, in the sense of wanting to provide one-on-one therapy in some way, whether it be a health-related goal for individuals like weight management, getting exercise, that type of quit smoking. I know these are all areas where health psychologists can be tremendously helpful. But being clear, in order to do most clinical work at a one-on-one level, you do need additional education in terms of a graduate degree or some kind of certification in clinical training. But coming right out of undergraduate, there are some options that would include things like you could be something they call a milieu therapist, or sort of a group therapist in hospital settings. Usually that's under close supervision of a doctoral level or higher level licensed clinician, but you are getting to sort of help patients get to their appointments, help lead some of their clinical care. Again, not as the main director, but just helping out with that. Their Albright SPS, School of SPS offers a certification where you can get the coursework to do an addiction counseling certificate. There is additional clinical work required after that to get hours. But you can complete a process like that would allow you to provide addictions counseling, which is very important right now with our opioid epidemic. Health psychologists also contribute to the research literature tremendously. So if you think about being a treatment provider, well, how do you know what treatment to provide? And again, that comes back to why the research basis is so important. We're providing evidence-based care for individuals. So being the person who produces that evidence. So another great option for students who really take to the research aspect of health psychology, I would say, would be a research assistantship. So this would be, and that can really help if they're interested in a doctoral level program, really make the application pop if they do well in undergrad. Have one of these jobs for a year or two. It's a paid position with benefits. You can tell your parents you're getting a salary, you're getting benefits. but you're really working closely with somebody who's, you know, in the field, has maybe a big grant to study, you know, some big project in health psychology or psychology more generally. Really getting your feet wet to understand that and doing that research coordination. And some people go on, there's higher levels and make a career out of it sort of at that level as a research coordinator, or go on to graduate school and then become the big researcher or the professor or the academic, or work for an agency that, you know, develops treatments and outreach to individuals.
Great.
Mhm.
And one last question. Aside from, you know, not having that spark in their general psychology class, are there any other points where maybe a student might want to consider pursuing a different program?
Mhm. I would, you know, when I talk to advisees, and sometimes if I'm getting concerned about the major GPA, and you know, they keep insisting, I love health psychology, or this, you know, I want to do X, like I want to be a clinician or something like that. But you know, if I'm seeing the numbers, I try to look for the pattern in the courses, because we're interdisciplinary. And sometimes when I'm talking to the student, I realize they're actually finding their joy a little bit more over in maybe public health. They want to do this, you know, make a difference at a policy level, or maybe they're really liking what they're doing. They took some of the sociology electives from our course, and that's you know, might be a better fit. So I think, you know, checking along the way where your strength areas are across the bio, psycho, and social, and seeing if, you know, if you end up in a position where only one out of those three areas is sparking joy when you think about your classes and registering for your classes, to maybe consider, would a major more specific to one of those areas be a better fit?
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all the information about health psychology.
Sure.
Charmin, any feedback or questions?
Yes, I just want to thank the panelists, first of all, for joining us, and just
Yes.
wanted to make some comments based on their input, particularly about, you know, options other than being a doctor. There are so many more options. Also, you know, having some joy about your curriculum. You know, you're going to be in a curriculum for 4 years, so you really, you know, should have some level of excitement about the classes, and also just looking, you know, initially at your introduction classes to see, you know, how you're doing in them, and just being realistic about if this is something you can commit to for 4 years. I think that's really, really important.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again to our panelists for sharing all of your information. I'm going to ask that you stay on. Students that have joined us, you are welcome to submit questions through the chat box. So we'll give you the opportunity to do that while Charmin goes over some other information on deciding what program may be right for you.
Well, actually, you know, we had some other resources that are helpful to help students make some informed decisions. They're on our website. One is What Can I Do with a Major in? And Laura Klein, the director of the EDLC, has recently looked into a resource called Focus. Laura, I didn't know if you wanted to comment about that a little bit.
Hi, Charmin. Thank you.
Hey.
Focus 2 is an online assessment tool that we're looking at bringing to Albright beginning in the fall semester, but we do have an opportunity for a couple of students to sort of demo that resource for us and give us some feedback. And Charmin, you could speak to how many of those we have remaining, but what the resource allows students to do is complete a number of assessments in both interests, in just sort of what they call personality assessment, and even things like what do you enjoy to do just for fun. So it's a number of the assessments that then will combine your results to look at what are the shared majors. Once we have it here for Albright, it will actually point you directly to specific Albright majors. Right now, the demo account is set up that it may point students to majors that we have similar majors to that at Albright, but not specifically named or titled the same thing. But that is, so for any students on the line that would be interested in completing that assessment, that would be really helpful for us too, in just kind of knowing, is this something that we should consider moving forward for other students?
Okay, thank you, Laura. Did anyone else have any questions or comments or input they would like to share? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. And again, just remember, you know, we have people here who want to help you make the best informed decision for your major. Your advisors, your faculty, our student success specialists, you know, the EDLC. There's just tons of support here for people, you know, being happy in their chosen major. So please take advantage of that.
I want to take a moment to thank the Office of Student Success for collaboratively working on this endeavor and helping us get this set up and sharing it with your students. Students, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's beautiful outside, so it's, you know, probably not the most exciting way to spend a nice sunny afternoon, but we really appreciate you joining us. And of course, our faculty, thank you so much for taking some time out of your also sunny, warm afternoon to talk with us about your respective programs. So we truly appreciate that. And again, I want to reiterate Charmin's comments that if any students have any questions, please feel free to talk with any of us. We'd be happy to help you in terms of choosing what program or career path might be right for you. So thank you again to everyone, and we look forward to talking with you all soon.
Okay, bye-bye.